If you're a dentist who's often felt that you're not doing well enough in your career, then this video is for you. Welcome back to the channel. If you are someone who keeps getting this feeling that you're not doing well enough in your dental career, then this video might help you navigate whenever you get those feelings. Let me know if any of these situations sound familiar to you. Let's say you have a friend, both of you graduated from the same college in the same year, and both of you are in private practice for the past 10 years. You have a small clinic, you have a couple of chairs, you have pretty good patients coming in, you're busy, you're doing well, and everything looks fine. Your friend, on the other hand, started at the same time as you with 2 chairs, but he made it into 4 chairs, and now you just heard that he's opening his second clinic, and suddenly you feel that you're not doing as well as him. Let's take another example. You have 2 friends, both teaching in the same institution. Both of you joined that institution as junior lecturers in the same year. And 10 years later, your friend has suddenly become the head of the department, whereas you still remain a professor. You are feeling fine all these 10 years because both of you were working in the same department. Suddenly, he's been promoted to the head of the department, and you start feeling that you're not doing as well as you should be doing in your career. If any of these situations sound familiar to you, you've just experienced what we call Mimetic Desire. This term was coined by René Girard, and to put it simply, it means we just don't want things. We want things which others have. Now, when we look at what others have, we aren't that disturbed by what people who are way ahead of us have. For example, if you started your career and you have someone who was already 20 years ahead of you when you started your career, then you don't have much of a problem when you look at this person who's 20 years your senior. Where we have a problem is when our peers succeed, someone who is in the same age group as you, or someone who is in the same situation as you, when they start doing better than you, that's when we start feeling this thing known as mimetic desire. So the discomfort is not because you want to just get from point A to point B. That's goal setting. Most of the discomfort is because someone else has reached point B and you're not there yet. You want to get there right now. That's the discomfort. So it's not just success that hurts. It's the success of peers. And then the question comes, if they can do it, why can't you? So let's look at how we can solve this problem. First, let's try and diagnose this problem, and then we look at some of the solutions. By the way, I've put together a small worksheet which can help you do this as you watch the video. You can find the link in the description below. Do have a look. It's a free 5-minute worksheet, and it'll really help you if you can do that along with some of the things that we're going to discuss in this video. So let's diagnose this problem first. Let's find out, before we aspire towards a goal and figure out how to reach there, how do we know whether this goal is really something that's valuable to us in the first place? Let's look at diagnosing that part first. So how do we do this? We can apply 4 types of tests. The first one is what we call the time test. So when we look at a desire or a goal that we are hoping to achieve, you can classify it into 2 types of goals or 2 types of desires. One is what we call a deep goal, and the second one is what we call a shallow goal. A deep goal is something that you've had for a very long time, whereas a shallow goal is something that just cropped up because you saw someone else achieving or pursuing that goal. An example, I like to teach, I like to give lectures, make videos like this, share knowledge, conduct online, offline courses. These are all things that I enjoy doing. But if I look back at my life, I've seen that this is something that has been there for ages. So it's not something that I just felt like doing this month or 6 months ago because I saw someone else doing some teaching. This is something that's been a constant part of my life for a very, very long time. So it is what we call a deep goal. Because if I look at my childhood, from the time I was in BDS, MDS, and the last 25 years where I've taught dentists, the common denominator in all this is the love for teaching. So the goal of trying to be a good teacher is what we call a deep goal. It's not a fleeting or a shallow goal. Now let's take the example of a shallow goal. A shallow goal is around 15 years ago, I started working in Dubai. And when I moved to Dubai, I was spending time with a lot of people who were interested in expensive watches and cars. I never knew anything about expensive watches or cars till 15 years ago when I started spending time with these people. Now, as I started spending time with these people, I too started exploring the possibility of buying an expensive watch or an expensive car. But it didn't last long because I soon found out that it was not in my intrinsic nature to aspire for these things. I was just aspiring for these because I was influenced by the peers around me. So that's an example of shallow goal. It didn't last. It was for a while and then it disappeared. Whereas the love for teaching is something that continued for a long period of time. So we can use the time test as one of the diagnostic criteria. How long have you had this goal or desire? The second test is what we call the energy test. When you are performing certain actions that enable you to reach a certain goal, how energized do you feel? For example, let's say you want to have a very good network. You want to know a lot of people in dentistry. You want to be in the lecture circuit. You want to talk to a lot of people. So you have to interact with a lot of people. You have to attend a lot of parties to kind of spread your network. How energized do you feel when you do these things? Now, I have a friend of mine who really loves going to these parties and going to large crowds and meeting and interacting with them because it energizes him. He's an extrovert. Whereas in my case, I'm the opposite. I don't like large crowds. I like to do small crowds. I like to do videos where there's not many people around. I like to do teaching. So I shouldn't be copying him and then go to these meetings and parties just because he's doing it, right? Because he's doing it because it aligns with the kind of person he is. Whereas in my case, it doesn't align with the kind of personality that I am. So that's the second diagnostic criteria you can use. When you perform these sort of activities which enable you to reach a goal, are you energized by it or does it drain you? And if it drains you, then maybe it's not the right goal for you. So that's the second diagnostic criteria, the energy test. The third diagnostic criteria is what we call the free test. If you were doing a particular activity, would you still do it even if nobody was paying you? Would you still do it if nobody else was watching you and knew you did that? This is another criteria which is really useful to know whether the goal that you're pursuing aligns with who you are or not. For example, if you're doing these videos, I make these YouTube videos every week and put it out there to share it with dentists. Nobody is paying me for these videos, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. It energizes me. So that could be a good criteria. Am I just doing it because everybody else is doing it, or am I doing it and having a lot of fun doing it? So that is the other good metric you can use as a diagnostic criteria. Would you still do it if nobody was paying you or if no one was watching you? The fourth metric as a diagnostic criteria is what we call the satisfaction audit. So when we know that we have to perform a series of tasks in order to reach a certain goal, we can look back on our life and see in the past when we perform these actions, what are the actions that gave us an enormous amount of satisfaction. So if you can find some common thread in the past which gave you a lot of satisfaction, then it makes sense to align this goal along with those actions which gave you a lot of satisfaction in the past. For example, I keep coming back to teaching. I can look back on my life and see that almost every activity where I was involved in teaching or sharing something, I derived an enormous amount of satisfaction. So it makes sense that I should always be involved in some form of teaching, because my past life, when I reflect on it, it tells me that wherever I've got a lot of satisfaction was when I actually was sharing something or teaching something to someone. So this is what we call the satisfaction audit, which is another metric you can use when you evaluate whether or not the actions that you're doing is in alignment with a certain goal that you are pursuing. By now, you should have a fair idea as to what goals you are pursuing and whether or not those goals that you're pursuing are genuinely yours, whether you align with those goals or they belong to someone else and you're just being influenced because of mimetic desire. Once you've diagnosed what goals are truly yours, and you know that these are deep goals that you need to protect, then you can establish some boundaries which can protect these goals. What are these boundaries? There are 3 boundaries you can establish. First is the digital boundary. Now, most of us spend a lot of time online these days, and we have to have digital boundaries if we want to protect our goals. What are digital boundaries? We can curate the social media that we are exposed to every day. We can choose not to follow those people who are pursuing goals which don't align with us. And on the contrary, we can choose to follow people who are pursuing goals which are meaningful for us. For example, if your social media is full of personalities who collect expensive watches and cars, and you found out, you've diagnosed that you are not a person who gets a lot of satisfaction by collecting expensive watches and cars, then why would you want to follow these people and then fill your feed with those kind of people? You'd rather fill your feed with people who are pursuing goals which are meaningful to you. For example, if you're someone who is interested in learning something new, if you're someone who's passionate about physical fitness and you found after exploring that physical fitness is something that is a very deep, meaningful goal for you. So you could fill your feed with people who are aligned with those goals rather than people who are aligned with goals which are very different from yours. And this is what we mean by digital boundaries. You can choose what to follow and what to get exposed to digitally rather than just go with the flow and follow what everybody else is following. That's digital boundaries. The second boundary is physical boundaries. You can establish physical boundaries. You can choose whom you are physically spending time with. If you have a friend circle, all of them who are pursuing expensive tastes, then you too will be forced to follow the pack because we follow people whom we spend the most time with. So we can curate that as well. If you are spending time with people and you're genuinely not enjoying their company and you don't like to pursue the things that they pursue, then you can choose not to be associated with these people. You can choose to spend time with people who are more like you, who are pursuing goals that you are pursuing. And this is usually the best way to get to your goal because most of us cannot survive with willpower alone. We need a gang, we need cheerleaders, we need to align ourselves and spend time with people who are pursuing similar goals like us so that we can feed off each other's energy so that it becomes synergistic so we all work towards a common goal. So that's what we mean by physical boundaries. We choose whom we are spending time with because, as you know, we are the sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So it's up to you to figure out who are these 5 people in your network, in your physical boundary that you spend the most time with, and you choose who those people can be. That's what we mean by physical boundaries. And once you've curated your digital boundaries and physical boundaries, this automatically leads you to curating your mental boundaries as well. This essentially means that time to time, you have to catch yourself and think whether you are mimicking someone else or desiring somebody else's dreams instead of your own. And whenever you catch yourself doing that, stop what you're doing. Tell yourself that this is not the goal that suits me. This is not my deepest goal that I need to pursue. This is somebody else's goal. Recognize that this can happen to any of us and then move out of that and start pursuing. Realign yourself so that you can pursue goals that truly matter to you. So I hope that 2026 is a year that you narrow down and figure out what goal is truly meaningful for you so that you can spend all your time and effort pursuing those goals which matter to you rather than just follow what everybody else is doing. Don't follow somebody else's dream because that dream belongs to that person. It might not be your dream. Once you know what goals make sense to you, then you could measure progress on how far you are traveling on that path rather than measuring yourself against someone else and what they are doing. That is the whole purpose of this short video. Like I mentioned, I've put together a small worksheet which you can use to figure out your own deep goal, and you can find it in the link in the description below. I'll see you next week with another video. Till then, take care. Thanks for watching.